because, well, we all know we are living very difficult times with this global pandemic. So I thought it would be good to have some notions about bereavement, grief, and loss. The outcomes of this presentation, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. I want to just talk about the definitions of these concepts, understanding the different differences and similarities between them, our attitudes towards them, and how to support someone with bereavement and grief. As I mentioned before, so these are some hard times. So bereavement is a period after a loss during which grief is experienced and mourning occurs. On the other side, loss can refer to losing someone you love, something that it was dear to you. It can be a relationship that fell through. It can also be losing our new sense of normal, which I think is happening a bit worldwide right now. So I think it's important to recognize our own perspectives of how we feel grief and loss, because loss doesn't necessarily mean losing someone or people dying. Sometimes it just means a change or losing a relationship, someone falling ill and adjusting to a new routine. So when we feel this sense of loss, which can, as I said, happen in different situations, the natural response we have is grief, which is an emotional suffering that you feel when something is taken away. In these times, we all might feel that our liberties are being taken away, or our sense of routine has been taken away. So I think it can affect the way we think, we feel, and can also affect our body. So I think acknowledging that we might be grieving, it's very important in times like this. There is no one way to grieve, and there are many different reactions as there are people. But I think in being aware of how we react to things and how different people react, it's helpful for us in understanding our own emotional path. So when we talk about grief, you might have heard there are 5 main stages, but that doesn't mean there is a timeline for grief. So the 5 stages, some of you might be aware, it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. People react differently, and some people might go through all of them, some people might not go through them, and they don't need to happen in a specific order. I just think it's important to be aware and remind ourselves that grief is unique, and acknowledging that we can feel it in different times and places, it's very important. So I based this presentation, so in order for it to keep it brief, in the concept of time and space. So if we have an understanding of what grief is and how we're feeling in regards to the tragic loss of life that is happening worldwide and all of these emotions and feelings that we're having, how can we cope, and how acknowledging these feelings can help us? So the first question is what? So what is happening? And we are the only ones that can understand exactly what are we feeling, and if what we're feeling is the same as other people or if it's different. So different situations can lead to feeling of loss. So as I said before, there's no correct way. So you don't need to know the people that are passing away, or you don't need to be super involved in this, but hearing the news and knowing this is happening worldwide can affect yourself. So it's actually important to acknowledge that we might feel a bit of sense of loss. So grief can happen anywhere, and normally some studies highlight a place where you share moments with people, or the people that you lost. But also, if we look at the perspective that I'm trying to approach today. So if we look at the perspective of the life that we used to have, so like being able to meet up with friends or sharing your space with people, so we might experience different feelings towards that. And how do we cope with this? So I mentioned the 5 steps. So some of us might have been in denial for a while during this lockdown, but I think going through the whole stages of grief can help us in being aware and acknowledging that grief and loss can be experienced in different sets of life. It's quite relevant. So most people that are in this webinar or watching this video, you support people and you care for people with learning disabilities. So I thought it would be important also to think, how can we help others by also starting to help ourselves? Because as I've been saying throughout this presentation, we are all in this pandemic, we are all experiencing different things. So it's important to start by helping ourselves and allowing ourselves to feel what we're feeling, and talk to someone if you feel it helps, or find a way to communicate it. I'm quite aware that in this time, like, we need to be connected over the phone, internet, try to find different ways for us to communicate, sending letters, try to make sure that you are acknowledging how you're feeling before you try to acknowledge what everyone else is feeling. And how can you help others? So as I've been saying, so everyone has a different process. So I think respecting the process and giving people time and space, it's the key element to be able to help others. Making yourself available. So not trying too hard. How do I put it in a way? So you will be helping others by respecting how they're feeling, and also making yourself available by saying, I'm here, we're all going through this. And it's important to know that other people are going through this, but also not pressuring people, or if someone is actually okay with this whole situation, there's no need to almost force the sentiment of loss or grief. It's important for us to listen to people and support them in their own process. And especially people that we work with, people with learning disabilities, they have different processes, and sometimes they need help and support to express themselves, but we don't need to force that process. I also put some resources that are available. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to have some examples for you. So talking therapies like IAPT are quite useful resources to access. There's a charity that works specifically with bereavement named Cruise, for example. Normally in communities you have community groups like churches or charities that can help you in this moment. They put together really good projects to help people be there for each other. And if you feel like you're acknowledging your own process and you feel like you're able to help others, you can actually work with these groups to help your community. Social stories seem to help people with learning disabilities to understand all these emotions and the emotions as well that all we're going through. And I think the most important resource we have is time and space. Sometimes we don't acknowledge the time and the space and the importance it has in the healing processes of our own feelings. So I think in this time, even if we are isolated, it's important to acknowledge that we have this time to use. So this is from one of the resources. It's an easy read booklet on bereavement. And this is normally when we talk about loss, bereavement, and grief, this is the cycle that people normally get into. So loneliness leads to helplessness and leads to anxiety, that in the other hand, anxiety leads to wanting to be alone. So we are stuck in this cycle. And I think it's important to acknowledge that even though we are isolating now, there are a lot of extra factors that don't help in our process, but all these things I've been talking about give us a bit of understanding of our own skills and strengths that we can use to break this cycle. So for instance, someone is isolating and they're feeling lonely and helpless, there might be something that can help. So talking to people, using your phone, sharing your own experience can be helpful. Understanding why the person is feeling anxious. Sometimes it can have something to do with understanding what's happening, and sometimes just sitting down on the phone or a video call and saying like, oh, did you hear the news and this happened, and explain it in a way that people would be more able to understand that it's not the end of the world per se. It's just everyone is doing this, and acknowledging that things will be coming back to a new normal, but we are all working on it. And also, when someone actually fell ill, or if someone close to them fell ill or passed away, it's important to focus on the importance of the rituals. And in the current times, the rituals might be broken because we might not access to different places where we used to share moments with that person, or we might not attend the funeral. So it's important to have different strategies. So if depending on cultures and how people react to things, it's important to give them access, even if it's via video call, or even if you can't attend a funeral, have some sort of ritual of sharing moments, or a scrapbook, or building something together that can be helpful for the understanding of the situation. So to break that cycle, I try to break it by making a square. When someone is feeling sentiments of loss, bereavement, and grief, one of the most important ones will be time, and also social support. And as I've been saying, social support can be adjusted and adapted to the current situation and in different situations, because if we think about it, people have different lifestyles and different settings in their life, and the conditions to feel what we're feeling are not always perfect. So it's important to incorporate that. Focusing on people's skills and strengths as well, it's quite important, because that will help them understand what they're feeling, and also reaching out and building their own path to feeling better, to cope with a difficult situation. I've added here some useful contacts, either for yourself or the person you care for. So that you can always contact your GP. Talking therapies like IAPT, you have self-referrals from online. We have the Community Learning Disabilities team, where we make some work around bereavement and loss and grief. So I divided it by all the 4 boroughs: Waltham Forest, Redbridge, Havering, and Barking and Dagenham. Some resources that might be useful to use, like I said before, Cruise Bereavement Care. They have a really good website where you have a lot of resources. So if you're supporting someone that has been experiencing different emotions and different feelings regarding the current situation, or if they lost someone that was dear to them, they have really good resources. Child Bereavement UK has good resources specific for people on the autism spectrum. Like I said, the social stories before. Local community groups are also very good, because people also feel involved in something, and they can just have that extra support from the social groups around them. And currently NELFT has 2 online groups, one for people with learning disabilities on Mondays, called the holding group, and then a carers group for staff that works with people with learning disabilities on Thursdays. So if you are interested in joining any of those groups, there's an email address that you can show your interest. And thank you for your attention. As Amal said, you can write your questions in the chat and try to address them later. Thank you.